All right, the Nintendo Direct just wrapped up. It was almost 35 minutes, actually. And there were a number of games that were announced here. I think just shy of 30 different titles. And I wanted to go over some of the highlights here specifically, as tomorrow morning we'll go through line by line. I wrote everything down here with release dates, timings, all of that. But there were a couple of standouts here. It's certainly something I was not expecting because Sony did technically show up here a couple of times, and it was not on my bingo card, I'll say, for this presentation. We'll go over some of that here today. So if you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe if you're new. Now, the first game I'm going to point out here, they opened with Dragon Quest HD, or 1 and 2 HD 2D. I really like 3. I'm looking forward to picking these up. That's coming out in 2025, but there was no real additional info in terms of when we could pick it up. They just showed like a new hero and stuff in the trailer, so I'm still kind of just in limbo right now, waiting to hear about the release timing for that, because I was pretty much sold on Dragon Quest 1 and 2 when they showed it, but definitely after playing 3. It's an awesome title. I recommend people who are fans of old school RPGs to check it out. Even if you're not as familiar with the franchise, you can still pick up 3 and start there, especially if you like the older aesthetic, the HD 2D style. But then I'm going to jump forward here to Patapon and Patapon 2 Replay. This is an odd one, and this is the one to me that kind of came out of left field here, because this is technically Sony, right? It's their intellectual property, but they're partnering with Bandai Namco, which they've done before. So they did that with Freedom Wars, where they went back, they picked out a couple of IPs, it looks like now, based on this direct, and they then went out and found developers, and in some cases, it was just Bandai Namco, and at that point, they're going to just go ahead and sell this game, and Sony will just take whatever licensing cut, I guess they do at this point, for that intellectual property. And this is a good thing in general, because it's pretty clear Sony isn't necessarily like, oh, what are the smaller Japan studio titles that are just sitting around? We definitely got to put a team on that. No, it's more like, hey, our teams are working on these big blockbuster titles, and these ones are just going to kind of sit on the shelf. So, yeah, why not let Bandai Namco play around with some of these titles and see what they can come up with? And in this case, having Patapon 1 and 2 as like a little collection there to release here on the Switch, July 11th, that's a great idea. I think it fits in great there. We also saw like Rhythm Heaven, so okay, great. Here's Rhythm Heaven Groove that's next year, and Patapon Replay here in a few months. Very, very interesting stuff here. And I had said earlier in the year on Click R3 that one of my predictions is Sony is going to be leveraging other platforms, specifically the Switch, more and more. And while this isn't Sony directly, wholly working on this game and putting it out there, I do think they're setting their sights on the Switch too, specifically. So to see these games then show up on the current Switch, it's like, okay, start putting 2 and 2 together, and I think that's a platform Sony can take advantage of and just make, I don't say free revenue, because you have to put money in, obviously, to make the games, but it's just kind of revenue there you can just gather without affecting your main base very much. Okay, so then we go from there to Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. And I think the game looks awesome. I think this is going to be one of the most impressive looking Switch titles. Yeah, I say that after Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition is out, but this is a game that we're expecting to run at 60 frames per second. And I think really push the boundary for what this little system from 8 years ago can do. And from what they showed, there's Planet Vuros, there's psychic abilities, and you can even like change the trajectory of Samus's shot, the beam shot. Here's the thing though. There was no release date, and I'm trying to figure out what Nintendo is doing here with this title, because on one hand, I would look at this and say, you know what? I'd rather have this after the Switch 2 comes out, especially if there's some sort of update or mode that takes advantage of that additional hardware bump. Yes, I would like to see that, and that's how I'd prefer to play through it for the first time. That said, it's weird that they've shown it to us a couple of times now and have not been prepared for any kind of solid release date. Now, it's apparently not going to be at next week's presentation for the Switch 2, which is kind of strange, because it's like, okay, when is this game coming out then? But maybe they do something else for it down the road and announce it on Twitter or other social media, and then boom, we're off and running after the Switch 2 comes out or is announced with its release date. I still think this makes sense as a title that comes out when the Switch 2 does, but we'll see if Nintendo wants to work that into their launch timing. Pokemon Legends EA is also in a similar situation. So they showed the game again, which I feel like I saw plenty of it last time during Pokemon Day, and they could have just dropped the release date on us there. But they showed it to us again here for like a solid 2 minutes, which in the grand scheme of things during this Direct, that's probably longer than everything else, I think, or close to it. So they show ZA Royale. At nighttime, you go around and beat up trainers, even sneak up on them and hit them with your Pokemon, apparently. Still late 2025. Again, they've shown this title now twice in the last, 2 months or so? Or a month? Yeah, a little more than a month. And still no release date on it. So it's kind of strange. I guess just, again, beating it into people's brains that, yes, there is a Pokemon game coming out sometime this year. Okay, I mentioned Rhythm Heaven. High on Life. This was in the sizzle reel, and I enjoyed this game, I think, more than other people did. But I liked it. It was fun. It's an interesting first-person shooter adventure-style game with certain kind of humor, I'll say, kind of that Rick and Morty style. So if you like that, maybe look into it. And then I'm actually going to move to Marvel Cosmic Invasion first. The game looks great. It looks like the old-school arcade action beat-em-up style games. There were a lot of numbers getting thrown around, so it makes me think there will be like RPG elements sort of added in there, as some of the numbers at times look huge. Other times they must have just been starting out at like base level because they were like 10 or 20 hit points coming up. So I think that looks great. Holiday 2025. I am absolutely keeping my eye on Marvel Cosmic Invasion. Hopefully it has like solid online multiplayer where you can get a bunch of people together in a room and just play through the game. That'd be great. Everybody's Golf Hot Shots. That's another title similar to what we mentioned with Patapon and Patapon 2 Replay. Sony showing up in force for this Nintendo Direct with Bandai Namco. Cool to see a new or another Everybody's Golf. I mean, that's great. 2025, I will pick that one up. I had fun with a lot of these type of golf games. I remember playing on the Vita, and that's pretty much where I spent most of my time. I know a lot of people played it on the PlayStation console, but I remember just playing some of these different more arcade kind of golf games there portably. I think it just worked really well. And lastly, I do want to mention the virtual game card. This should have its own section completely on Newswave, because I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, okay, they're basically explaining game sharing, but in the most Nintendo way possible, because I feel like in their mind, it's very simple looking to them, and they're showing it off. Look how easy this is. As they were going on, I'm like, okay, why are they making this so complicated? The idea is to just add more value and make it easy to share digital games to continue pushing people somewhat in that direction, because yes, they make more money on digital games in general. First party wise, they just collect the entire $60 or $70. They don't got to worry about shipping stuff to stores. The potential, by the way, for leaks. There's so much stuff that does play in their favor if you buy digitally. And, I think it is good for people who do buy digitally to have these kind of options, because if I buy a game digitally, it is kind of just stuck on my Switch, right? Where my account is, it's just tied to that. And it is nice where if you have like kids or friends in general that you want to maybe let borrow a virtual game, or maybe you have multiple Switch systems and it just makes it easier to pass them around and lend them out. I mean, it makes sense. It's just the way that they showed the UI and navigating it kind of seems like it's going to take some getting used to, because it wasn't as, I feel like, straightforward as they were trying to make it out to be. Still, though, we'll be able to learn more about this at the end of next month. So about a month from now, late April, and we get tested out here on the current Switch, and it's also going to work on the Switch too. Again, we'll look a little more in depth in this whole thing when I get a chance to read over some of the materials they send out with the press release in Newswave tomorrow. But to me, the big highlight, I was not expecting Sony to continue this kind of a push so soon after Freedom Wars. Here we are now with things like Patapon, things like Everybody's Golf. Makes me wonder what they could have in store for everyone with the Switch 2 that is more capable, and yes, we assume would be able to run PS4 level games from Sony. And I mean, if you look at their lineup, they have a lot of games that they've kind of been hanging out with that were on the PS4 and have made it even through cross-gen that could potentially go to the Switch 2. So the way I see this now, based on the fact that Sony keeps a lot of these games off of the Xbox, makes me think they're becoming kind of comfortable with Nintendo and their platform, and that they don't see it obviously as like direct competition for their high-end PlayStation 5 box. So why not move more stuff over? So that's the big thing I'm going to be looking to with the Switch 2 in its first year or so. Do we see Sony show up there by themselves with something like, sounds weird now, but we'll say Horizon? It's possible. Horizon, they seem to want Horizon everywhere, so maybe. I mean, technically it's already on the Switch with Lego Horizon. I mean, like a good Horizon game, one that people might be a little more interested in. But let me know what you guys thought about some of these announcements down below in the comments. As for the Direct itself, I'll admit there was a lot of stuff I was like, Like, I know people are excited for Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, because it's like the first new entry in 10 years, and kind of feels like Nintendo has forgotten a lot about Miis in general this generation. So, hey, there you go. Kind of a reminder that they do exist. But for the most part, this kind of felt like, we see the Game Awards or something and they have the pre-show, and people look over the notes for pre-show, but they don't tune in specifically and have the popcorn ready for it. Kind of like that. It's kind of like a filler episode for an anime. Like, I feel like I just watched Goku and Piccolo learn how to drive before craziness breaks out in the next arc, and that's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay, here's the Switch 1, the Direct. It's on its way out. We're going to see a lot of third-party games, smaller titles, but next week is the Switch 2. That's like the main event for a lot of people. So, okay, maybe this didn't hit as hard, but next week we should get some pretty big announcements. That's kind of the way I'm looking at this one. But again, let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.